4.2 billion this company was sold for. Where's that second belt? Go backstage and grab that belt somewhere.
As one of the biggest names in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, you'd expect Conor McGregor to have the respect of at least a few of his fellow fighters. As it turns out though, the dynamic brawler is one of the least respected combatants of the league, with many using him as the quintessential example of what a UFC fighter shouldn't be. But what is it about Conor McGregor that has granted him this position? And what has he done in the past to deserve the status of disrespect that has been put on his name? Well, whether you're a fan of mixed martial arts or just want to know more about the controversies that Conor McGregor has been involved in, stay right where you are, as we're about to explore why the big name will never be respected in MMA again. So strap yourselves in and get ready for a bumpy ride, as things are about to get interesting. But before we get into it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss out on any of the new videos we post. Number 1. He posts ridiculously childish things. Fans of the UFC will be the first to speak up when it comes to the immature side of the competition, with fighters from all over the world doing whatever they can to get under the skin of their opponents prior to the fight. But when it comes to Conor McGregor, things also seem to go a step too far. In fact, take one look at his official Instagram account and you'll find numerous examples of McGregor being a straight-up child. And in many instances, this conduct of his has actually resulted in the MMA star getting into some pretty hot water. A great example of this took place a few years ago when McGregor posted a picture of himself driving his white BMW. What set this picture apart from others on his account, however, was the fact that he was wearing a ski mask and pointing a silenced assault rifle with extended clip right at the camera. You know, the type of thing that a Call of Duty addict primary school kid might have thought was cool. One group of people who didn't agree with the sentiment was the Irish police force, who launched a pretty solid investigation against McGregor prompted by the strict gun laws that are applicable in Ireland. In responding to police, McGregor stated that the guns in question were fake and that he was actually practicing for an upcoming movie role. All these years later, and this anticipated film is yet to come out, causing many to believe that McGregor simply made the story up in an attempt to save his own bacon. This conduct resulted in him becoming the laughingstock of the MMA for quite some time thereafter, causing a number of fans to hold up hilarious signs mocking the fighter for his strange conduct and lies. Number 2. He fetishizes female fighters. When it comes down to it, mixed martial arts is all about respect. Sure, fighters try to psych out one another in an attempt to grab the mental high ground, but after the fight is over, things often return to normal. Even before the fights, contenders are expected to touch gloves as a sign of mutual respect. But as the saying goes, you have to be respectful in order to earn respect. And there is no other fighter in MMA who has been as disrespectful towards the female fighters of the industry than Conor McGregor. A great example of his poor attitude towards his female counterparts can be seen in that infamous remark of his which was said just before Ronda Rousey was set to take on challenger Miesha Tate. When asked by an idiotic fan on Twitter which of the two women McGregor would have sex with on his last day on Earth, the UFC fighter responded by saying that he would have one riding on top of him while the other one sucked on his toes. Clearly, this was not the correct response at the end of the day, and was by no means meant to psych anyone out, since neither woman had prospects of facing off against McGregor at any point. It was nothing more than a disgusting comment that led to other fighters standing up for Rousey and Tate, calling McGregor out for fetishizing the female contestants of the sport. A true sportsman would have either ignored this fan's tweet or stood up for his female counterparts, but McGregor did the exact opposite. Funnily enough, UFC president Dana White then stepped in, condemning the tweet and demanding that McGregor apologizes for his conduct, which the Irishman then did shortly thereafter. It's really no wonder the other competitors in the industry don't respect him. Number 3. He snatched the belt of Jose Aldo. When it comes to the running of the UFC, things aren't as simple as fighting to make money. In fact, the true reason competitors go up against one another is to secure the championship of the division that they have been placed in. There's nothing better than holding that championship belt for the first time, and knowing that you are the absolute best in that particular division, after all. But sometimes fighters get their hands on the belt in the worst way possible, which is what brings us to the next controversial moment on our list. So let's take a look back at the press conference for UFC 189, which saw Conor McGregor doing one of the most disrespectful things a contender can do to another. For those of you who don't remember, the story of UFC 189 was that McGregor was set to take on Jose Aldo in an attempt to clinch the featherweight division championship belt for himself. Months of back and forth comments from the fighters on social media had culminated in this press conference, leading McGregor to quickly snatch up the belt of the champion and hold it above his own head in front of his hometown of Dublin. UFC president Dana White tried his hardest to keep the two fighters separate from one another, with Aldo jumping up from his seat in an attempt to get his belt back. But luckily, backup arrived before things could get too heated. But the contenders on the scene at the time didn't think this conduct was as funny as McGregor's Irish fans thought it was at the time, which helped to build a real aversion to Conor McGregor in general. Number 4. He disrespected the entire roster of the GOAT Go Big conference. This wasn't the only time that McGregor went ham at a press conference though, with many on the circuit still remembering the time he got under everyone's skin at the Go Big press conference. Wearing his signature set of sunglasses with his UFC championship belt propped up just in front of him, McGregor started trying making pop shots at every contestant that was present at the conference, regardless of whether he had a chance of fighting these contenders or not. He went on to criticize each and every one of their performances over the last few years. His hit list included the likes of Donald Cerrone, Rafael Dos Anjos, and Frankie Edgar, all of whom looked pretty confused to be taking heat from the newest champion of the circuit. And while fans of McGregor absolutely loved his loudmouth antics at the press conference, other UFC champions spoke up stating that true champions didn't aim to put other contenders down. They backed themselves in the octagon with their fists, not at an irrelevant press conference with their words. The professional reputation of McGregor dropped significantly with this outburst of his. Number 5. He burned the WWE. And if you thought it was just the UFC and MMA in general that Conor McGregor has set his eyes on, you'd be absolutely wrong. As it turns out, he had quite a bit to say about the WWE at his press conference for UFC 202. You see, people have been saying for quite some time that McGregor should be thinking about going in the direction of the WWE, as he is far more suited to that challenge than he is for the UFC. No doubt that he's a good fighter and all, but as you can tell from his list, he prefers to use his mouth to run down other contenders, which is not something that the UFC will stand for. He sells himself as one heck of a fighter and most certainly has the gift of the gab, which would make him an incredible WWE champion. But when he was asked about the prospects of him joining the sport, he responded by mocking everyone who both watches and competes in the WWE. He even name-dropped Brock Lesnar, stating that he was the only fighter in the sport he could support, but then added that he was juiced out of his eyeballs at the time, so there is no way he could actually respect him as an actual fighter. He then mentioned that he would be able to demolish everyone on the WWE roster at that moment, not really understanding that WWE has next to nothing to do with fighting and everything to do with showmanship. So as it turns out, Conor McGregor might not actually be one of the most disrespectful tools of the UFC on purpose. He might just be a tad bit brain dead from taking too many punches to the face. Number 6. He retired more than once. The world of MMA was thrown for a bit of a loop back in 2016 when Conor McGregor first took to social media to announce that he was retiring from the sport for good. In fact, this tweet of his saw more retweets than the tweet of Kobe Bryant announcing his own retirement from the NBA. Both fans and media outlets were in complete disbelief as McGregor had recently signed on to rematch Nate Diaz at UFC 200. And it looks like everyone was correct to take this news with a pinch of salt, as a mere 2 days later, McGregor announced that he was no longer willing to retire. He explained that he made the announcement, said he had grown tired of the promotional grind of the sport, which is crazy considering how much he seems to love running his mouth. He then retired once more in 2019, only to come back to the sport after he had likely become bored with his life. What do you think of Conor McGregor? Be sure to let us know in the comment section down below.